Chapter 10 of History of Japan in Words of One Syllable. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. History of Japan in Words of One Syllable by Helen Ainslie Smith. Chapter 10. The Long Sway of the Hojo Clan. It was Yoritomo's father-in-law, and not the sons of the Gen clan, that took the great shogun's place. When Yoritomo died, he left no son so firm and strong that he could take up the work of his great sire and fill the post he had so long held. But there was a man to take his place, one who had no mean rank in the realm himself. This was the father of Yoritomo's wife. He was Tokimasa of the good old house of Hojo. He was a man of fine gifts, who knew how to use his might and to get a strong hold on the folks he had to deal with. He soon took his son-in-law's place in all but name, but he did not hold the shogun's rank. On Yoritomo's death, his son, Yoriie, a young man 18 years old, was at once made head chief of all the Japanese troops, and it was thought that he would ere long take his father's place in all things. But the Japanese have a phrase which means, "There is no seed to a great man." That is, they have learned to look for naught in a great man's child. In this case, they found their old saw true, for Yoriie had none of the good stuff of his race in him, or, if he had, he'd let it go to waste while he tried to have a good time. But his grandsire could wield the rod of the great shogun, if he could not, and from the time of Yoritomo's death, the house of Gen went down, and that of Hojo rose. Tokimasa and his child, Yoritomo's wife, were both folks of more than plain gifts, and they had been of great aid to the shogun from the time he set out to put down the Taira. So Tokimasa knew the ins and outs of his son-in-law's rule as well as most anyone in the realm. He was made chief of the Council of State on Yoritomo's death, and soon got much of the rights of his grandson's post in his own hands. He let it seem that he did not know that Yoriie had bad ways, and did not fill his place as he should. But all the time he took good care to put his friends, and the sons of his own house, in all the posts in the realm that he could get hold of. So time went on, and when Yoriie was made Grand Shogun in his father's place, Tokimasa still kept the real sway in his hands, and ere long he made Yoriie yield his place to his brother, a lad 12 years old, and to shave his head and be a priest in some Buddhist shrine. And there he was put to death by a man in the hire of Tokimasa. So it came to be with the shoguns, as it was with the mikados, that he who bore the name was but a tool in the hands of some smart man, full of craft and wit and force, one who would stoop to anything to get the rule of the realm in his grasp, and who wove his net so well that both the mikado and the shogun were bound in it. The sway of the house of Hojo did not break down as soon as those of Taira and Gen had done. It was kept up for near 120 years, and though none of its sons tried to seize the rank of shogun, 12 of them held all the might of that place. Of these, the third, the fourth, and the fifth were men of great force, who got a strong hold on the realm, and who did much for the good of the state. Some of them made a long search through the whole realm for the best men they could find to put in the posts of trust. One of them was one of the most grand and pure men that we can learn of in the tale of any land. He did a vast deal to drive out bad ways and mean tricks, and all such ills as, in all realms, are sure to brew with the men who have a share in the rule. One of the Hojo's set up at Kanazawa a fine stock of Chinese books, works of the great sage Confucius, of Buddhist and of the Japanese too. For these folks had learnt monks to write, with all else that the Koreans and the Chinese had taught them. These books brought scores of men, young and old, to the great town, some to teach, and some to learn the laws and the lore of the faith. For there were few in those days but priests who gave their thoughts to books. In all these years the post of shogun was held for a few years at a time by mere boys, in the hands of the Hojo, whose rank had the name of skikken, and whose sway was more than that of the Mikado. At any that they saw fit, they would force their shogun to leave his place, that they might put some child, too young to have a will of its own, in his stead. It was in the Hojo rule that Japan had her first great war with folks of a strange land. This was the short fight with the Mongol Tartars, who, when they had put down the Sung rule in China and set their yoke on the vast realm of Russia to the west, and held Asia in their grasp from the frozen ocean to the Straits of Malacca, from Korea to Asia Minor, sent word to Japan through Korea that they would have from the realm of isles gifts and such things as the Emperor Kublai Khan thought meet. Japan must show that she felt him to be her great chief too. But the Japanese would do no such thing, and though some men came from China 6 times, the Hojo sent them back each time with no good news for the Khan. At last the Mongol thought he would take by force what he had tried in vain to get by smooth words, and ere long a host of 10,000 men were on the shore at Tsushima and Iki. All Kyushu rose up in arms to meet them. They made a brave set at these strange foes. They slew their chief, and what men they did not kill they sent back to the Khan, with a sad tale of loss to tell him. But he would not give up his plan, and at once sent 9 men to wait on the head of the realm, to say that they would stay in the isles till they could bear back some word from the Japanese throne to their great lord. But they did not go back at all, for all of them lost their heads ere they got to Kamakura. This, of course, was a sign for war, and the Japanese set to work at once to be in trim for the great fight. One more band came from the Khan, and met with the same fate as the last. Then the great Mongol set to work to make war on the small chain of isles that would not send gifts to him, who had swept Asia and felt that he was lord of the whole of the East. The Japanese had not seen such a sight in all their lives as the great fleet of 3,500 Chinese junks, whose sails made the sea as white as snow, and within whose huge hulks there came 107,000 men. Such a host as Japan had not dreamt of. They came, too, with some of the arts of war that were used in the West by the great troops of Europe, which were far more sure than the rude ways of the East. What could the small, light boats of the Japanese do with these great things? Some of them were sunk at once, and though the Japanese were quick and full of craft, so that now they burnt a great ship, and now they made their way on board some big, proud junk, and cut off the heads of its chief men, the fight for a long time was so close that no one could tell which side would win. Scores of the brave men of the Isles were cut down, and yet the great foe could not get on land. Each time a force was sent out to the shore, it was cut off or sent far out to sea. This sort of strife went on for some time, till at last the brave Japanese captain, Mikiari, made a bold stroke that gave the day to his side. He put out from shore with a small band of men in 2 small boats, and the Chinese thought no one would dare to do this in the face of their great fleet, if it were not for peace. So they did not shoot at him. But as soon as he was near the great Tartar junk, he flung out ropes with large hooks on the end of them that caught a firm hold on the side of the craft, and then he and his men leapt on board. Bows and spears were no match for the sharp swords this brave squad now brought forth, and in a short time the close hand-to-hand fight came to an end, and Japan had won. The great junk soon went up in flames, and those who had not lost their lives in the fray were borne to the shore in the bonds of their foes. The rest of the fleet ere long was made a wreck by one of those fierce storms, which we call typhoons, that sweep the west coast of the Pacific in the last part of summer and the first of the fall. It was a scene of woe and of grief and loss that cannot be told, and the Japanese say that it was done by the gods who heard them pray to be rid of their foes. It was the last time that the Mongols tried to set their yoke on the Mikado's realm, and to this day the Japanese boast that at no time has a strange host left the stains of camp or war on their land. It was the first and last time that any realm tried to land its ranks on their shore. End of chapter 10.